everyone. Hope you've had a wonderful day today. This week we're going to be looking at 1 Samuel chapter 5 verses 1 through chapter 7 and verse 2. Last week we were able to look at the tragedy that happened in Shiloh. We saw Eli, his two sons, and his daughter-in-law. They all died in one day. We also saw that the Ark of the Covenant was captured by the Philistines. So the Israelites had lost the battle, and not only did they lose the battle and the death of many men, they also lost their Ark. And we saw how that affected the people back in Shiloh when they were told and given this information. They felt like they had lost the glory of God. And for some, that was very devastating, so much so that we saw that the daughter-in-law she died, So this week we're going to look at the Ark of the Covenant in captivity. The Ark has been stolen. It's being held captive by the Philistines, and we get to see what that looks like today. So here's the question. Have you ever had a win that really didn't feel like a win when it was all said and done? Like that argument that you had, and that things were going right because you're given this information and it seems like it's on your side, but then when it's all said and done, because of what came out of it, you realize it wasn't a win at all, because nobody was better off as a result of it. I'm thinking that that might have kind of been what the Philistines were feeling. Like they had won, the Israelites had retreated, they had killed tens of thousands of them, they have captured the Ark, but then once they get it back, I think they start to feel like maybe this isn't a win at all. So just this quick overview, they capture the Ark, they bring the Ark back to their temple. Their god is Dagon. So they bring it back to put the Ark in the temple with their god. Their god Dagon. They look to him for wisdom. They look to him for strength, for success in battles, which is probably why they put the Ark there, because they had felt that this is a win. And Dagon brought us this win, so we're going to put the Ark right there. Well, immediately, things started to make them think, is this really a win? It tells us that the very next morning when they got up, Dagon, the statue, had been knocked over, so it's laying face down in front of the Ark. God has a sense of humor, doesn't he? So they don't think anything of it. They put Dagon back upright, and then the next morning they get up, and Dagon is once again face down in front of the Ark, but this time his head and his hands have been broken off, and they're at the altar. Not the altar, the threshold. So thinking about, what does that mean? Well, this is their God that is face down before their enemy's God. His head, which is where wisdom comes, his hands, which is where strength happens, gone, just broken off, and then put on the threshold. The threshold is the temple. So crossing the threshold into the temple. Here we have the Ark of God. Here is the Ark. Here is where the glory of God resides, and the wisdom and the strength of their God, who's face down in front of the Ark, is not even in the temple anymore. It's at the threshold. So, just thinking about that. Then we see that the Philistines, over the next 7 months, they are taking the Ark and moving it from city to city. So they feel like maybe some of the things that's happening, because now there's a plague of rats, they're getting boils, tumors on their bodies. So they're thinking that, well, maybe this has something to do with that ark. But instead of acknowledging God, sending it back, they start moving it around from city to city, all Philistine cities. So at some point, they get to like this third city and they decide, okay, let's just send it back. But even in that, there's this sense of wisdom and trying to outmaneuver things. So they come up with this plan of how they're going to send it back. They're not going to bring it. They're not going to call anybody to come get it. They've come up with this plan as to what they're going to do. And they build this wagon and they're going to have these cows pull it. But the cows are female cows, and the female cows have calves that's nursing from them. And the nature of the cow is to find its baby. I remember watching an episode of The Rifleman, and somebody had stole some of the rifleman's calves. So he's trying to get his calf back, and the people have already branded him and telling him that he's not there. You don't know what you're talking about. So what the rifleman decided that he would do, because he had not branded him with his logo, but the people who had stolen it had. So what he decided he'd do, he decided he would bring the cow. And he said he knew that the cow would find the calf and the calf would find the cow. So that's what they were scheming, that these cows wouldn't bring the ark back to the Israelites, that it would go looking for their calves. But we know that God is God always. So the cows, they went straight back to the Israelites and brought the ark back. And then even then, the Philistines are kind of standing back, like, I'm not going to go in and say that, we did wrong, or, look what your God is doing. We're just going to let it go back. And then the Israelites, in that, they rejoice when they see it. And as we read, we find that some of them did something that they shouldn't have done. And as a result, they were killed. So I want you to think about trusting God. Trusting God is like maneuvering in traffic. Okay, stay with me. Not driving, but maneuvering traffic with the goal of getting ahead of the traffic. So when you're when I'm maneuvering traffic, the first thing I'm doing is I'm looking ahead. I'm trying to figure out, when do I need to get over, which lane is going the fastest. And then sometimes it's even getting in this temporary place that I can get back, perhaps in the same lane that I'm getting out of, but I need to get around something. And in all of that, I'm also looking back. So I'm figuring out where I need to be. I'm watching the whole thing, but I'm also looking from where I'm coming, and then I'm trying to find out what the ultimate move is. So when I think about that, think about, with God, when I'm trusting God, I'm looking ahead, trying to figure out where do I need to be, not necessarily with my own sight of where I need to be, but I'm looking ahead so I can see where God is ordering my steps, so I can take the very next step that He's calling me to. But then I'm also realizing that sometimes the step that He's calling me to is not my final step. It's just a step that I need to take to get back to where He needs me to be. And then I'm also looking back, because I'm remembering what God has done, and then that encourages me and that strengthens me, and it helps me in holding on with my trust. So trusting God is what has to be the ultimate move. So how do we do that? I want to offer these three things. One, we want to read and study His Word. This is like the looking ahead. like I'm looking at the lanes. I'm trying to figure out where I need to be. So I'm reading and studying His Word. I'm going to believe and trust His Word. You know, this is looking behind me, and so I can make sure the move that I need to make before I move ahead. I need to look what's behind me and where I'm going. Then my third thing is to obey and live His Word. And obeying and living His Word is actually the switching of the lanes. You know, do I need to get here? Do I need to get back here? So to trust God, I'm going to read and study His Word. I'm going to believe and trust His Word. And I'm going to go obey and live His Word. Even if it doesn't look like what I think it should look like, even if it isn't the popular thing, if God said it, I'm doing it. And then when we do that, we can see that God is God always. You know, so the location of the ark didn't matter. God was still God. God's will be done. And we need to be obedient at all times. So even when God was captured, when the ark was captured, God was never worried. You know, because His will be done. And even in those things, this had to be done for the things that He was yet to do. And then we also have to realize that there are consequences, both good and bad. We call them rewards and punishments, but there are consequences. And we need to be doing what it is that God is calling us to do. And the last thing is that we need to trust God in all things. We have to remember that God ultimately has our best interests at heart. So we need to trust Him in all things. And in doing that, we submit ourselves rather to Him. So tonight I want you to be, as you prepare and we get ready to do our lesson, you know, one of the things I want you to think about is, what does it look like for you to trust God? Look forward to seeing you guys. Thank you.